Listen to The Rocking Horse Winner by David Herbert Lawrence, Level B1, Oxford, Reading University.
A woman lived in a big fancy house with a beautiful garden and many honest servants. She was a woman of rare beauty and other great advantages, but she had absolutely no luck. For some reason, she didn't love her children. However, she treated them as gently as any loving mother would. No one, apart from her children and herself, could ever tell that she was only pretending to be a good mother. The family never denied themselves any pleasures and always lived in style. But actually, they couldn't afford it, as their income was quite low. Many times, the mother tried to find a way out of their financial difficulties, but she always failed. She and her husband were too attached to their expensive lifestyle. The unspoken warning could be heard everywhere in the house, even though nobody said it out loud. Whenever a new toy appeared in the children's room, the children could hear it say silently, "We don't have money." Their stuffed toys, fancy doll's house, and shiny wooden rocking horse all said the same thing again and again. One day, her son Paul asked, "Why don't we own a car? It's so uncomfortable to use Uncle Oscar's car whenever we need to go somewhere." "Are we poor?" "We cannot afford a car because your father is very unlucky," replied the mother thoughtfully. "Does luck bring money?" guessed the boy. "Rather, it causes you always to have money," said the mother. "Though only God knows whether a person is born to be lucky or not. Your father is very unlucky, and so am I. But before we married, I used to be quite lucky." She fell silent. The boy looked at her doubtfully. "You know, Mother, God told me that I am an incredibly lucky person," he suddenly said in a determined voice. "Did he?" asked his mother with a laugh. It annoyed him that she didn't believe him. He decided to prove to her that he was right. Paul put all his effort into trying to find the clue to luck. He secretly searched the house without talking to anyone. While his sisters played with dolls, he climbed on his horse and jumped up and down. His eyes burned with such wild fire that his sisters feared to even speak to him. At the end of each ride, he looked hard into the horse's eyes and shouted, "Now show me the way to luck! Take me there!" One day, Paul's mother and Uncle Oscar walked into the children's room while he was riding his horse. "Have you won the race, little jockey?" asked his uncle with a laugh. "You are too old for a rocking horse," stated his mother. She seemed rather disappointed. But Paul just ignored them both, not wanting to stop halfway. Eventually, he climbed down his horse and cried proudly, "I got where I wanted to go." "Well, you should never stop till you get there," said his uncle. "What's your horse's name?" "It has various names," replied Paul. "Last week it was Sansovino, after the horse that had won the race." In general, Paul was very interested in horse races. He could talk about them for hours. One day, when they were alone, Uncle Oscar asked him, "Do you bet money on horses, Paul?" "Do you think I mustn't do it?" Paul asked back with an innocent look in his eyes. "Rather, I appreciate your ambition," replied the uncle with a smile. "I hope you can advise me on the upcoming races at Lincoln." "You should bet on Daffodil," said Paul confidently. The uncle was confused. The horse named Daffodil had had no impressive achievements before. "I am sure he will win," the boy went on. "But you must promise me you won't tell anyone about it. Nobody should know except Bassett and me." Bassett worked as a gardener in the house of Paul's parents. "He is my partner," continued Paul. "He lent me my first money to bet on a horse, and I first started winning with the money that you gave me, so I guess you are quite lucky. Just don't tell anyone." "You're right," said Uncle Oscar and laughed nervously. "I won't tell anyone." Several days later, Uncle Oscar took Paul to the Lincoln races. "I'll bet 20 pounds on Mirza," he said, "and give you 5 pounds to bet on any horse you want. Are you sure you want to bet on Daffodil?" The boy didn't doubt for a second. He had never been to a race before and could hardly sit still with all the excitement. His burning eyes were fixed on Daffodil. The horse came in first. Uncle Oscar gave Paul the 20 pounds he had won. "Now I have 1,520 pounds," concluded the boy seriously. His uncle looked at him with his eyes perfectly round. "What did you say?" he asked. 1,500, repeated Paul calmly. "Uncle, if you promise not to tell anybody, you can become our partner. You've proven yourself just as lucky as Bassett or myself." Later in the day, Uncle Oscar took the two partners to Richmond Park for a talk. "Last year I gave Master Paul 5 shillings to bet on a horse," explained Bassett. "He lost it. But ever since he got those 10 shillings from you, he hasn't lost one bet. I think he is naturally talented. His predictions never fail." "Did you win anything, Paul?" asked Uncle Oscar. "Yes, I won 2,000, replied the boy. "I wouldn't reject Master Paul's offer to become partners if I were you, sir," commented Bassett. Uncle Oscar wished to see the money before making his decision. They returned to the house together. Paul and his uncle stayed in the yard. A while later, Bassett brought £1,500 to show to Uncle Oscar. "What makes you sure that a particular horse will win, Paul?" he asked. "I'm not quite aware of what it is," replied the boy carelessly. "I just know it, Uncle. Sometimes I'm not so sure, and then we are careful, because if I'm not sure, we mostly lose." The uncle became their partner. At the next race, the boy intended to bet £1,000 on some unfamiliar horse. The uncle did not want to take the risk and bet 200, and Bassett was as brave as to bet 500. The horse came in first, and the winnings amounted to 10 times the size of the bet. "What are you going to do with your 10,000? asked Uncle Oscar. "I started it all because Mother was upset," replied Paul. "She said she and Father were both unlucky, so I thought that if I were lucky, our house would stop talking." "Does the house talk to you? What does it say?" asked the uncle. "That we don't have money," said the boy. "It's horrible, Uncle, but I don't want Mother to know about my luck. She'll make me quit betting." "All right, son," said the uncle uneasily. "We won't let her know." Paul wanted to give the money to his mother, so they made a plan. Paul gave Uncle Oscar £5,000. He passed it on to the family lawyer. The lawyer had to send Paul's mother $1,000 each year as a birthday present. He would tell the money was given by some remote relative who wished to support the family. Soon came the day of her birthday. At breakfast, she was sorting out the letters that she had picked up with the morning post. Paul watched her face change as she was reading the letter from the lawyer. Then she folded it up and put it down without saying a word. Later, Uncle Oscar arrived to report that she had come to visit the lawyer and asked him to give her the whole £5,000 at once because she was having financial difficulties. "We must give her the 5,000, Uncle," announced Paul. "I'll get some more money from the Grand National race." After Paul's mother received the whole amount of money, the house had simply gone wild. Its quiet voices turned to shouting. Plenty of new furniture appeared in the house, and Paul's parents hired a private teacher for him. Soon he managed to get into the private school that his father had attended. But the voices in the house were driving him mad. "Now we need more money than ever," they shouted. Paul was frightened. He and Bassett had lost some money on the previous races. "I've got to win the Derby," he told himself repeatedly as if in a dream. "You've got to rest," his mother said worriedly as she noticed the change in his mood. "Why don't you go to the seaside? You think too much about the races. I will send Bassett away and ask Uncle Oscar not to talk to you about horse racing again." "I'll do whatever you want, Mother," he said, "but please, don't send me away till the Derby ends." "I never knew you were so attached to this house," she replied thoughtfully. "All right, you can stay till the end of the Derby, but promise me not to care too much about the races. You'll worry yourself into some mental illness." "I promise," he replied cheerfully. "I'm glad to hear it," she said with doubt in her voice. The nearer the day of the Derby race drew, the more oddly Paul acted. He could hardly stand on his feet and failed to respond whenever he was spoken to. His mother suffered greatly. For the first time in her life, she was worried about her son. One night she came home late. She went to her son's room to make sure he was fine. She pressed her ear to the door and listened closely. A strange, continuous noise was coming from behind. She realized that the sound was oddly familiar. She stormed into the room and turned on the light to see her son madly jumping up and down on his rocking horse. She watched him for a while, frightened and amazed, and then let out a horrible cry. "What are you doing, Paul?" "It's Malabar, Bassett! I am sure it's Malabar!" shouted Paul. His eyes flashed at her for a second, and then he fell to the floor. He had a fever. The mother sat by his bed for days. She asked her husband whether he knew anything about Malabar. Then Uncle Oscar told her that it was the name of the horse that was going to run for the Derby. Uncle Oscar told Bassett about Paul's prediction. They both bet money on Malabar and won 14 times their bets. The day after the race, Paul got a lot worse. His face was deathly pale and lacked any emotion. In the afternoon, Bassett came to see Paul. "Master Paul," he called out softly. His eyes shone. "You guessed it right. Malabar came in first. You have won over 80,000 pounds. "I told you it would be Malabar, Mother," said the boy silently. "Now we have 80,000 pounds. Did I tell you I could ride my rocking horse and learn who the winner would be?" "You never did," she replied. That night, the boy took his last breath. The mother watched him lie dead on his bed and heard Uncle Oscar's voice. "You have 80,000 pounds, Hester, but you have no son anymore. Maybe it's better this way. At least he doesn't have to ride his horse to find the winner anymore."
Do you like audiobooks? The Ewa app has a whole library waiting for you. Explore a wide range of genres and levels while boosting your vocabulary. Just tap any unknown word while listening or reading to see its translation instantly. Check out appewa.com. I think you forgot to like and subscribe. And now, let's listen to another English audiobook.